I encountered some really disgusting people who did some terrible things to other human beings, but I never had the thought of, man, I should just shoot this person and get it over with. You know.
Wow. Within those, I think you said 5 years before you became a sergeant, you were so for those 5 years you're a patrol
Yes.
officer. Okay. Besides that very first horrendous day on your job, I don't feel, I feel sorry for you, man. That's, something. But what are some other things that have happened in those 5 years where maybe you questioned if you wanted to continue doing this? Maybe you questioned some of your human morals. Like, can you remember any incidences that pop out in your mind right now, like some crazy times?
I never once questioned, should I still be a cop? Never once. There were some times where, like I said earlier, we went from having a police chief to a civilian police director. And the problem with that is the standard run for a police chief is something like 15 years, right? So whether you like the chief or hate the chief, your department is going in one direction for a set period of time. And the average time for a police director is like 2 or 3 years. I think from 2000 when we changed to 2020 when I got promoted to captain, I want to say we had 18 different police directors in that time. So there were a few times where, based on that leadership, I considered going to other departments, but never once considered, man, this isn't for me, or should I get into something else, or not once.
Could you maybe in detail remember an incident like that where you thought, I want to switch a department? Like, what would cause for a police officer to want to do something like that?
Poor leadership. I don't want to get into it, honestly,
Okay, that's cool.
because I just don't want to name names and
No,
specific.
that's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, there were a few bosses, a few police directors that I just disliked so much that I considered going to other departments.
Was it something that had to do with law or just your moral compass?
Yeah, but personalities and morals. I think that the most important resource, really in any job, but certainly in law enforcement, is the humans, the police officers there, right? I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it's not cars, it's not radios, it's not guns, it's the employees that are the most important. And there were a few police directors who I feel, from my level, saw the employees as just a number, just a commodity. We have 50 cars and 300 cops, and that's all that the officers were to that director. I could be wrong, right? Because I was, in those times, I was a sergeant or a lieutenant. I wasn't sitting in the police director's office listening to what he or she had to say. Um, but from my perspective at that time, I felt like they just weren't treating people properly and considered leaving. But I'm glad I didn't.
So
I
you
don't.
stayed with the same department for all those years?
Yeah, yeah, 26 years.
Wow. I think it's something, some sort of your personality trait, man. Maybe you're just a loyal human being like that, man.
I,
Um
I definitely had loyalty to the department and the city of Trenton. I was born and raised there, so it's still in my heart. Even though I don't live there now, it's still important to me.
Within those few first years of you being a patrol officer, did you ever have a feeling like you wanted to go to a safer neighborhood?
No, like I said, I became a cop for that action. So, no, not specifically for that, right? One of the reasons I became a cop was for that action, and I loved it. And uh, yeah, I wouldn't want to go from getting in car chases and foot chases to driving around a farming community where very little crime happens.
So while you're picking up these years, is your sense of justice developing more, or are you now sort of losing your faith in humanity? Like, how does this happen internally?
Yep. I mean, hey, there's definitely been periods of that 26 years where I was disgusted with humanity. Yeah, no doubt about it. Um, but I think I'm pretty centered, morally, and always was able to bring myself back out of that.
So again, like I'm just asking about your first years of being a patrol officer. Did you have any encounters where you had to your moral side had to fight with the legal side of things? Can you remember any instances like that, or do they always go hand in hand?
Not particularly. I mean, I encountered some really disgusting people who did some terrible things to other human beings, but I never had the thought of, man, I should just shoot this person and get it over with. It was this this person did this thing. I have to arrest them. I arrest them. So I was never tempted with like vigilante justice or anything like that.
So you were a patrol officer for 5 years, correct?
Yeah, just shy of 5 years.
Okay. You're becoming a sergeant, which again, from what I understand, it's sort of unheard of to do that leap that quick, right?
It was, yeah, particularly for Trenton Police Department, it was one of the quickest.
Okay. So how do you get promoted? What are some of the things maybe you could advise some young officers that want to follow your footsteps? How do you become a sergeant in 5 years?
Yeah. Well, in a civil service department like Trenton, it's just a matter of studying and taking the promotional test, right? The promotional exam is available to you. So there's a cycle of when they're available, but as long as you have been a police officer for at least 3 years, the test would be available to you. So from just strictly how do you do it standpoint, it's when that test comes up, make sure you study for it, make sure you are well prepared, and you take the test and you do it. From more of a personal standpoint, I wouldn't even recommend that. Um, I love the career path that I chose, but if I had to recommend something to someone, I would say stay at that lower level for 10 years at least, and go do everything in the department that you have the opportunity to do. Right, start in patrol, go to some specialized unit like we had over the years. They were called different names, but proactive or street crimes or TAC, which their job was to go out and target street level gun crime and drug dealing. Be a detective, work behind the scenes in services where you're dealing with property and evidence all day. Get as much well-rounded experience throughout the department as you can, and then go on and become a supervisor.
Why are you saying this? Because of you would like to see police officers more experienced before they get that higher up?
Yes, I would like to see them more well-rounded, because I did a lot of those things as a supervisor, and I feel like had I done them hands-on at the patrol level or the detective level at that first level, I would have been more well rounded. Kind of like going way back to the beginning of this conversation where I said college wasn't necessary, but it made me more well rounded. Um, I feel like doing those things hands on at that first level would have made me a better supervisor.
Mm,
I
okay.
think I have a pretty good reputation in the department still as a good supervisor, but I feel like I would have been a better supervisor had I done more things prior to getting promoted.
That again just shows me your sense of justice, and us as citizens, we want to see this more and more. So in order to become a sergeant, in order to get promoted, don't you also need some sort of re- recommendations from other higher ups to recommend you to that position? Because it can't all be just tests, right? Like don't they have to kind of say that, yeah, I can say this is a good officer, let him get that, promotion?
Yeah, so civil service has a lot of benefits, but some negatives also. One of the negatives is that someone who can prepare and do well on a test ultimately is going to get promoted, almost definitely, right? So there's something called a rule of three with civil service, right? So if I come out number one, two, or three on that list, I'm almost definitely getting promoted because they can skip. Like, let's say I come out number one on the sergeant's list, and I'm just not a good person, and the chief or the director is like, I don't want this person as a sergeant. They can pick number two or number three from that list, right? But when the next position comes up, they can skip me one more time. But when that third position comes up, I have to get promoted. Now, there are timelines, right? So if it's a smaller department and you're not getting a lot of turnover, then maybe my list expires, or they just don't have that many spots to promote. So in a smaller department, a chief might have a little more leeway in that sense. But in a department like Trenton, um, there's only that opportunity to skip you two times. The third time, you have to get promoted, and it doesn't matter if the bosses think you're going to be good at that position or not. You pass the test, and you have to get promoted.
Yeah, because what I was really asking is, don't you think it's more important that your department, after observing you, for however long, can say that, look, this is a good cop, let him become a sergeant, as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to take this test and pass. And like you said, you can be a dickhead, you can be a bad person, man, and you take this test flawlessly, and now you're a sergeant, you're a supervisor, man.
And I can think of one particular person who could ace these tests. Every time he took this test, he aced it, and he didn't implement any of the things that you had to learn in order to do good on this test. He didn't implement any of them in the real world, right? Like, everything that you learn, he did the opposite, right? So yes, there's definitely things that could be tweaked in the civil service world. How to do it or what the answers are to that, I don't know them. But yeah, the department probably should have a little more say in who they're promoting, rather than just, here's your civil service list and you have to follow it, line by line.